Joining me in the foyer to get into some of this stuff is the Parliamentary Secretary of the Minister of National Defence, James Bezan, the NDP's defence critic, Jack Harrison, and the Liberal defence critic, Joyce Murray. Mr. Bezan, the Chief of the Defence Staff, discussed the death of Sergeant Doiron this weekend, and he said there are 3 investigations into the tragic incident. The government will be briefed on those findings in a month, but he said the Canadians acted perfectly. I don't get it. How can he say that the Canadians acted perfectly if we don't know the results of the findings?
Well, I'll just say this. First of all, our thoughts and prayers are still with the family of Sergeant Doiron. And I can also say that as soon as these reports are dealt with by the Canadian Armed Forces, the sections of them that don't deal with military operations will be made public. So we have the 2 reports that are coming from the Canadian Armed Forces, one from the Provost Marshal, the other from the Special Operations Forces itself. And then, as you know, the U.S. Special Ops Forces have also done their own independent investigation, which will help inform the 2 Canadian investigations. But
just you know, again, we're trying to understand how this tragedy happened. There are 3 reports. We haven't seen them. At first, the Peshmerga, the Kurds, said that they blamed the Canadians on it. So there's 2 different versions. Now, the Chief of the Defence Staff said Canadians acted perfectly. It was fatigue on the part of the Peshmerga. There's a lot of different accounts. How do we know what really happened if we haven't seen these reports yet?
Well, I think we have to be patient and wait to see the report or the reports as they become available. We are asking to have those released as quickly as possible, and the Chief of Defence Staff said that he's going to do that. And so once we have that information and we can see that you know, according to the Chief of Defence Staff, that if it was attributed to fatigue on behalf of the soldier in the Peshmerga, then at least we'll have the details surrounding that. And so once that information is available, it'll be shared with everyone.
Okay, well, I mean, again, I'm trying to figure out why we don't know. He knows. He's telling us things about things we don't know. Jack Harris, what's your sense of this?
This is not right. You know, we've got the Prime Minister there in Iraq and Kuwait being asked questions. He pleads ignorance, total ignorance, and then we've got dribs and drabs a spin coming out from the Chief of Defence Staff about reports. We're talking about something happened 2 months ago now, and they're waiting. In a month, they might release them after they've sanitized them. This is supposedly a training mission. What military secrets are there in a training mission? The government has been keeping a lot of information from the public about this mission. We were only found out months into this that they were doing things that weren't exactly training. They were actually calling in airstrikes and doing things that we weren't told they were doing. So what kind of sanitization do they need to do here before they make this public? That bothers me, and I'm sure it bothers the family of
Why do you say it bothers the family? How are you?
Well, you know, I think people want to know the truth. It's fundamental to a democracy when a soldier is killed in this kind of situation. The family and the country has a right to know what happened and not get something.
Mr. Harris, to be fair, this is okay, and I agree that we might want. I'm surprised that anything's been said if we don't know anything. But by the same token, this was Special Forces missions. There is a cloak of secrecy usually around them. Are you concerned that it's being extended to hide what really happened?
Well, look, it's a part of this government's approach is to keep people in the dark as much as possible until eventually they find out something of the truth. And I think that that's wrong. You know, the Prime Minister is there being asked questions. He says he knows nothing about it. The Chief of Defence Staff is standing next to him, and then he starts talking about the report that he says that they haven't briefed the government on. There's something wrong with this picture, frankly. In a democracy, we need to know this. We also have 3 other soldiers who were wounded, one seriously. We don't know anything about the state of their health and recovery. So we need to know more, because Canadians deserve to know what the consequences are of governments making the kind of decisions that they're making. We've got the Prime Minister over on what appears to be a major campaign-style visit complete with photo ops, and we're not getting at the truth.
Joyce Murray, let me bring you in. What's your take on this?
Well, Evan, today in question period, I talked about the need to release these reports release the U.S. reports that the government already has, and bring this to our Defense Committee with the minister answering questions there, and have some transparency. And it really is disrespectful to the memory of Sergeant Doiron, and disrespectful to his family that the government is leaking out bits and pieces that are intended to burnish the government's profile on this, when clearly there is an investigation. Either release the reports so we all know what are in them, or don't talk about them until the government's ready to release them. But the selective set of leaks, I think, is very disrespectful.
So let me go back to James Bezan. I'm looking at, looking through what exactly was said by General Tom Lawson. He essentially said, what you're going to find is fatigue on the part of the Peshmerga. I mean, again, you got to understand, we've got tragically the death of a Canadian soldier back in March. We know nothing about it. There's reports your government won't release. The Prime Minister is over there with the Defense Minister, and the Chief of the Defense Staff telling us, kind of insinuating what happened. Why won't you release more so we can get a better, clearer picture of what's happening to the men and women on the front lines?
This report will be released very shortly, and definitely the Chief Defense Staff has seen that report, and now they're just making sure that what's in that report does not have any confidential information in there as it relates to military operations. Once that has been balanced off with the content of the report and how this friendly fire accident has occurred, that will be released in its form. And so it is.
So with the Peshmerga wrong, with the Kurds wrong, they had a different version of it. So you're saying the Chief of the Defense Staff has seen the report. He's basically saying they were fatigued from, and they made a mistake. The Canadians acted perfectly. Can you now tell us, when the Kurds said that wasn't true, are they wrong?
Ultimately, these three reports will speak to what actually happened, and hopefully that will balance off with what Canada has said from the start and through the Canadian Armed Forces versus what we heard from the Peshmerga.
It'll be pretty hard to trust, actually.
Well, this
is very hard to trust what the government ultimately says.
First and foremost, we got to remember that, look, at first, and it's not, when he's talking about fatigue, he isn't talking fatigue about the Canadian Armed Forces, he's talking about fatigue of the Peshmerga themselves. And so, we have to keep these in context. Let's not prejudge this until the entire report has been put out.
Let's not dribble out pieces of information.
It's not that we dribbled it out.
What we're getting is an interpretation and a conclusion. They're fatigued. Why are they fatigued? Is it because it's 11 o'clock at night? Is it because something else is going on? What were they doing there? What was going on that no one knew who they were?
We'll find all this out in due course.
We'll find it out in due course, but let's see the reports. Let's not have.
I just want to remind everyone.
Let's not have an interpretation.
If we'd done this report and investigation as a board of inquiry, it would have taken a lot longer. This is actually going to be.
How come the Prime Minister didn't know anything about it? He didn't think to ask?
Well,
because
no.
The Chief of Defense Staff was right there.
I'm sure that the Prime Minister and everybody else will be fully briefed when the Canadian Armed Forces have
3 or 4 weeks' time.
When the Canadian Armed Forces has the report ready for presentation to the public.
But the conclusion, I got 10 seconds here, Mr. Bezan. The Chief of the Defense Staff said the accident was a result of Kurdish Peshmerga fatigue. Is that the Canadian position?
I believe that's what he had said. That's my understanding.
Evan, if this was a private sector problem and they had a problem with a product, I mean, here we have the armed forces, we've had a soldier killed. The private sector would be disclosing what happened. They would be making sure they were talking about how it would never happen again. They would be doing everything possible to support those who are affected. And here, instead, we have a government that is all over the map with this, and I think it's very unprofessional and unworthy.
They weren't going to be at the front lines in this war. They weren't going to be there at all. Now they were there, and this is where it happened. So, this is a serious business here. It's not simply a matter of someone making a mistake.
Okay, I got to leave it there. We will wait for this report. James Bezan, Jack Harris, Joyce Murray. I always appreciate seeing the three of you here. Thanks so much.